My long-lost sister reached out and begged to reconnect after 23 years, and the real reason that she went missing changed my entire life. My sister was declared a missing person at 18 and was never found. I did everything to find her, even spending 5 months randomly driving around the country without break in hopes of randomly finding her. But neither me nor anyone in my family were ever able to do so. It took me many years, countless therapy sessions and mental breakdowns, but I finally learned how to live without her. And then 23 years after she went missing, she sent me an email. In it, she profusely apologized for what she did, saying that life had left her no choice. She begged me to meet up with her and forgive her. If she seriously thought that I would welcome her back into my life after 23 years of silence, then she was absolutely correct. Within minutes of reading her email, I responded to her. Emily, I can't believe it's really you. I've missed you so much. Of course I want to meet you. When and where? Love, David. A few days later, I was sitting on a stool in a small cafe with my legs dangling. I nervously glanced around. My mind raced. What would she look like? What would she say? And most importantly, why did she disappear all those years ago? And then Emily finally walked in. She looked older, but the same warmth and kindness in her eyes were unmistakable. As soon as our eyes met, we both smiled and hurried toward each other. David! She threw her arms around me. I hugged her tightly, and tears began to well up in my eyes. Emily, I've missed you so much. We sat down and spent hours catching up. After a while, Emily looked at me with curiosity in her eyes. So David, tell me everything about your life. What have you been up to all these years? How's your job? Got a lucky girl waiting for you at home? I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Well, where do I start? After you left, things were really tough. Mom and Dad were devastated, and I tried to keep it together for them. I actually quit my job and drove around the country for half a year with no destination, all in hopes of randomly bumping into you. I had no luck, of course, though. After that, I finished college and got a job as an accountant. It's not exactly my dream job, but it pays the bills. Emily nodded. I can only imagine how hard it must have been. Do you like your job at all? Honestly, not really, I admitted. It's just numbers and spreadsheets all day. I feel like I'm stuck in a rut and every day feels the same. I've thought about quitting so many times, but I'm not sure what else I would do. She reached out and squeezed my hand. You deserve to do something that makes you happy, David. Life is too short to be unhappy in your work. I smiled. Thanks, Emily. It means a lot to hear you say that. As for my love life, there's not much to tell. I've been single for a while now. I had a few relationships, but nothing really stuck. I guess I've been too focused on work and just trying to get through each day. Emily's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. Have you thought about trying online dating? It might be a good way to meet new people. I chuckled. I felt a bit embarrassed. I wouldn't even know where to start with that. It feels so foreign to me. Don't worry, I can help you with it, she said with a reassuring smile. We'll set up a profile together and see how it goes. You never know, you might meet someone amazing. We talked about our lives, the lost years, and the many things we had missed. We laughed and cried and reminisced about our childhood. It felt like no time had passed at all, and yet we had so much to fill in. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and I became inseparable. We did everything together: hiking, cooking, watching movies, and even taking dance classes. It was like we were making up for lost time, and every moment was precious. One evening, as we sat on the porch of my apartment sipping tea and watching the sunset, I finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been haunting me. Emily, why did you leave? What happened all those years ago? She looked at me, her eyes reflecting a deep sorrow. For a moment, she was silent. She seemed to be gathering her thoughts. Finally, she set her teacup down and took a deep breath. You deserve to know the truth, David. It's a long story, and it's not an easy one to tell, but I want you to understand what happened. I nodded. She continued. Remember that night we went camping with Mom and Dad? Remember how I wandered way too far from our campsite? The thing is, the moon was bright, and I thought I could find my way back easily. But I got lost, and before I knew it, I was deep in the forest. I really underestimated how far away our tent was. Her eyes darkened as she continued. I randomly came across a group of women. They seemed to need help. They told me they were part of a camping group, and I believed them. They were kind and gentle, and I didn't think twice when they offered to take me back to their camp to get some help for me so I could find you. I thought it was my only chance. Emily's grip on her teacup tightened, and her knuckles turned white. But it was all a lie. They were part of a cult, David. I went pale. Emily, that's awful. What did they do to you? They took me to their hidden compound deep in the forest. It was an old, decrepit house, surrounded by thick trees and underbrush. I was scared, but they were so persuasive. They made me feel special, needed. Every time I would bring up you, Mom and Dad, they told me you all were coming for me, and that they had already called you. But it wasn't long before I realized the truth. Her voice shook as she continued. They made me participate in their rituals. They worshipped a leader, a woman who used to be a camp counselor for some organization. She was charismatic and manipulative, and she had convinced her followers that they needed to give their own red on a constant basis and worship the Almighty Lord, as this was the only way toward salvation. I felt a chill run down my spine. She continued, sometimes they would do extreme measures too. Sometimes a little red was not enough. Sometimes we needed all the red that a human had to offer. I hated every second of my time there, but they had convinced everyone that they would unalive them the second they suspected disloyalty. so I grit my teeth and bared it, hoping to find a way to escape. How bad was it, Emily? What was it really like? I asked. Let me tell you a story. One night, one of their crazy rituals went horribly wrong. They had captured a 25-year-old woman, and she was a tough one. She found a way to set the house on fire. It was sparked by the candles they used. The fire spread quickly and consumed everything in its path. Her voice was barely a whisper now. While everyone was trying to save themselves, I saw my chance. In the middle of the chaos, I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran and ran until I finally found a couple camping. They were first frightened, but after explaining that I was lost, they took me to the police, who helped me find you again. Even years after that experience, I didn't know how to talk to you again. It took me such a long time to recover both physically and emotionally. I couldn't reach out until now. I sat in silence, trying to process everything Emily had just told me. The thought of my sister enduring these horrors was almost too much to bear. Emily, I can't imagine what you went through. I'm so sorry. She squeezed my hand, and her eyes were filled with sorrow. It's okay, David. I'm here now, and that's what matters. From that day on, Emily made it her mission to help me improve my life. She felt it helped to make up for all the lost time and helped her cope with the trauma she's faced in the past. Emily sat across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes filled with determination. David, you've spent so many years just getting by. It's time for you to start living. I looked at her a bit, taken aback. What do you mean? She smiled, and her enthusiasm contagious. First, remember how we talked about getting you into online dating? You've been alone for too long. It's time to meet new people and open yourself up to love. Over the next hour, we worked on my dating profile. Emily asked me questions about my hobbies and interests and what I was looking for in a partner. We chose a few photos, and she helped me write a bio that felt genuine and inviting. My next challenge was the gym. Emily was persistent in encouraging me, so I decided to join her. Our first visit was a little intimidating. I felt self-conscious and out of place. Don't worry, everyone starts somewhere, Emily reassured me as we stepped onto the treadmills. We'll take it slow and work our way up. Over the next few months, we established a routine. Emily's enthusiasm was infectious, and I began to see changes not just in my body, but in my mindset. I felt stronger, more energetic, and my confidence grew with each session. You're doing great, David, Emily would say after every workout. I'm so proud of you. Despite the progress we made together, Emily sometimes struggled with the weight of her past. There were nights when I would hear her crying softly in her room. The trauma from her past haunted her when she least expected it. I knew that healing wasn't a linear process, and I wanted to be there for her, as she had been for me. One rough evening, I found Emily sitting on the porch. Her shoulders were shaking, and she was sobbing. The moonlight casted a pale glow over her. Emily, I said, and sat down beside her. What's going on? She wiped her eyes. It's just sometimes it all comes back, David. The memories, the fear. I try to be strong, but some nights it's too much. I put my arm around her. You don't have to go through this alone, Emily. I'm here for you, always. The next day, I suggested that we find a therapist who specialized in trauma. At first, Emily was hesitant. I don't know, David. Talking about it is so hard. I understand, I said, but you've helped me so much. Let me help you now. We'll find someone who can support you through this. Emily agreed to give it a try. We spent time researching and eventually found a therapist who had high reviews. I went with her to the first appointment and sat in the waiting room. When she came out, she looked relieved. It was hard, but I think this might help, she said. As the weeks passed, Emily's therapy sessions began to make a difference. She started opening up more, both in her sessions and with me. On nights when the memories overwhelmed her, she would come to my room. We would sit together and we talked through her feelings. There was a moment, about 6 months into her therapy, when I noticed a big change in Emily. She seemed more at ease. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, she turned to me with a smile. David, I had a breakthrough today, she said. I finally talked about the night of the fire. It was painful, but I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I hugged her tightly, my heart swelling with pride. That's incredible, Emily. I'm so happy for you. I couldn't have faced it without your support. You've helped me find the strength to heal. And then a couple of days later, seemingly out of nowhere, I met Sarah. We connected online because of her love for books and hiking. Her warm smile was captivating. Emily, I think I found someone interesting, I said, showing her Sarah's profile. Emily peered over my shoulder. Her eyes lit up. She seems great, David. Send her a message. What's the worst that could happen? I wrote a message to Sarah and hit send. To my surprise, she responded quickly. Our conversation flowed naturally, and we soon arranged to meet for coffee. On the day of our first date, Emily gave me a pep talk as I nervously adjusted my shirt. Remember, just be yourself. You're a wonderful person, and if she's the right one, she'll see that. I smiled. Thanks, Emily. I don't know what I'd do without you. I arrived at the same cafe I met my sister just months ago. I was a few minutes early, and my was heart-pounding with anticipation. When Sarah walked in, I recognized her immediately. She was even more beautiful in person. David? She asked, smiling as she approached. I stood up and returned her smile. Yes, Sarah. It's so nice to finally meet you. We ordered our drinks and found a quiet corner to talk. The conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about our favorite books, hiking trails, and life experiences. I felt an instant connection. This was something I hadn't felt in years. As the date came to an an end, Sarah looked at me with a twinkle in her eye. I had a great time, David. I'd love to do this again. Over the next few months, Sarah and I spent a lot of time together. We went on hikes, explored new bookstores, and cooked dinner at each other's apartments. Emily was thrilled for me. She welcomed Sarah into our lives with open arms and invited her to join us for family dinners and outings. Her support meant the world to me, and it was clear that she and Sarah got along well. One evening, as we were all sitting on the porch after dinner, Emily turned to Sarah with a smile. "You know, Sarah, you've brought so much happiness into David's life. It's wonderful to see him so content." Sarah blushed and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Emily. I feel incredibly lucky to have found David. He's a truly special person." A year after Emily and I reconnected, my life had completely transformed. I was no longer the lonely, unhappy old fart she had found. I had quit my soul-crushing job and found an opening in a field I was passionate about. I was confident, happy, and in a healthy relationship with Sarah. One evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Emily. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done, Emily. You've changed my life." She smiled. "You've done all the hard work, David. I just helped you see what was possible."